Good evening and welcome to the council meeting of the 13th of July 2020. This meeting is being conducted with COVID-19 protocols in place for social distancing and isolation. The meeting is being conducted electronically using Zoom and is being live streamed on Facebook Live. Town Hall is closed to the public and the most up-to-date meeting package is on the Town of Kentville website. The public may send questions directly to the CAO's email at krice@kentville.ca. This meeting is called to order. Have all of the councillors received and reviewed their meeting packages? Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated? I will remind members of council that we are in decision-making mode and we should be mindful of our decision-making wheel. We have committed to make balanced, respectful decisions adhering to our code of conduct. We will be voting by poll. The chair will call your name and ask how say you. This method permits us to verbally record your vote. Are there any conflict of interest issues we should be aware of before the meeting commences? I would also like to advise that Councillor Maxwell will be leaving our meeting shortly after 6 p.m. to visit her mom in the hospital. CAO Rice, could you please take the roll call?
Thank you, Your Worship. All members of the council are present, accounted for, and myself and Solicitor Matart are also on the meeting.
Excellent, thank you very much. You have before you the proposed agenda. Are there any additions or deletions? There being none, if I could have a motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. You have before you the revised minutes of the 29th of June 2020 council meeting have been distributed for approval. Is there any errors or omissions with those minutes? Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Worship. So the June 29th minutes, I believe on page 5 of 87. So it's the be it resolved that the land use bylaw for the town of Kentville be amended as follows. And then there's 5 parts there. It says councillors who voted in favor of this motion and councillors who voted in favor of this motion. So it's just an amendment there.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all.
So that will be it. Those who voted against in the second line.
Correct.
Thank you. Is there any other issues with these minutes? There being none, they will be, the recording secretary will annotate the minutes in red and the annotated minutes will be added to the electronic meeting file as approved. You have before you as well the emergency council meeting on July the 8th, 2020. Are there any errors or omissions with this set of minutes? All right. Then they are approved as distributed. Thank you. We'll move on to our department reports. And as always, you were provided with the reports and any questions, you had the privilege to connect with the CAO to have responses on those. So we'll go through them as they come up. So the first report is the Finance Director's reports. Are there any questions on this report? Councillor Savage, I see your hand is still up. Is that from the previous?
That is from the previous, but I see there's 2 TBRs to be approved under that, but you'll probably cover that anyway.
Yes, they are separate actions on this agenda. Thank you. So just of note in the finance report, you'll note that our revenue, we should be at about 25% of our budget, where we're actually at 37.1%, and you can see that our taxes have been coming in at a good and steady pace. So we're in good shape considering the whole COVID thing. You'll also note that our expenditures, we should be at about 24.7%, and we've just had a few exceeding the 25% guidelines, but those are because of bulk payments or annual payments of some supplies. So as well, I just want to go back to the interim tax bill. We were not sure as municipal governments how COVID would affect the payment of property taxes, but we're actually at 96.1% or 90.6% of our interim levy has been collected. So we're actually in very good shape from that perspective. So we'll move on to the first, a temporary borrowing resolution with regards to the sanitary sewer area service capital 2020. So we have a recommendation that council approve a temporary borrowing resolution for sanitary sewer area service capital 2021 in the amount of $215,000, and further that it be forwarded to the Minister of the Department of Municipal Affairs for provincial authorization. If we
So
could have
moved.
a motion on that, Councillor
Second.
Savage, thank you. Second was John. Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve a temporary borrowing resolution for sanitary sewer area service capital 2021 in the amount of $215,000, and further that it is forwarded to the Minister of Department of Municipal Affairs for provincial authorization. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is to approve the temporary borrowing resolution for the sanitary sewer area service capital 2021 in the amount of $215,000, and further that it is forwarded to the Minister of Department of Municipal Affairs for provincial authorization. Councillor Bolland, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Pulsifer, how say you? Councillor Savage, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Andrew, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell, how say you?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
I say yes, the motion is carried. Thank you. We have also before us a temporary borrowing resolution, Town of Kentville Capital 2021. And we have a motion or a recommendation that council approve a temporary borrowing resolution for the Town of Kentville Capital 2021 in the amount of $846,600, and further that it be forwarded to the Minister of Department of Municipal Affairs for provincial authorization. If we could have that moved, please.
Move.
Thank you. And a seconder?
I will.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve a temporary borrowing resolution for the Town of Kentville Capital 2021 in the amount of $846,600, and further that it is forwarded to the Minister of the Department of Municipal Affairs for provincial authorization. Is there any further discussion on this?
Question.
And the question? The question is to approve the temporary borrowing resolution for the Town of Kentville Capital 2021 in the amount of $846,600, and further that it is forwarded to the Minister of Department of Municipal Affairs for provincial authorization. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Bolland, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Pulsifer, how say you? Councillor Andrew, how say you?
Yes.
That's my character.
Councillor Savage, how say you?
Yes.
I say yes. The motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on, you have before you the Planning and Development Director's report. Are there any questions or queries on this report? There being none, we will move on to the Community and Economic Development. Are there any questions or queries with this report? Councillor
Just
Savage.
sorry.
Councillor Savage, your hand is up.
Yes, it is. And my question, sorry, just let me go. You're being very fast today, Mayor Snow.
Sorry.
I can't keep up with you. So in Lindsay's report, there is a note made around the operational plan for the DIC so that we'll feel comfortable opening, the services this season, et cetera, et cetera. So I know that that some of the public works folks and rec folks are storing some of their equipment there. Are we looking, CAO Rice, to maybe open that within the next month or so, giving them enough time to get that cleaned out? I'm just thinking we probably could physically distance there with a couple of people.
Yes, Councillor Savage, we are aware of that and we are making plans. We are not too terribly optimistic about the VIC opening up, but we are making plans just in case.
So I'll just make a note around that, just with regards to the articles that I'm reading around Nova Scotia, and people are traveling, within provinces and within our own provinces and staycations, that it might be of use to have that open, realizing that there's not too much we can offer there in terms of new pamphlets and things like that. But I think the optics of it are good. That's just my own personal opinion.
And even if we can't get the physical building open, we are working on the phone so that when they call the Visitor Information Center, it's forwarded to our manager.
Okay.
She'll be working out of her home and they can still get all the information that they need, and she can still even assist with hotel reservations or anything. So basically a virtual VIC.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Councillor Andrew.
Yeah, just one thing. I know there's a slightly amusing spelling error in the third point of under programs and operations. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be mentoring plus, not mentoring plus. However, that's not my question. My question is, are you able to speak to, we had some communication challenges with KBC, and I'm thinking of the interfacing that happens between our economic development, community and economic development office and KBC. Is there a sense that that's kind of smoothed out, reconciled, worked out, moving forward? Is anyone able to address it, perhaps?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
We have open lines of communication and working through with them, and they're very excited about the opening of the Pub Hub in Center Square. And we had some work going on there last week, and they're very excited about starting to look at putting some entertainment and that on the stage. So to my knowledge, everything's fine. We're working well together. KBC is a very valuable entity to the town and to our downtown, and we enjoy working with them.
All right, are there any further questions on this report? I see no hands, then we'll move right along to Parks and Recreation. Are there any questions or queries on this report? Councillor Maxwell.
I think just a second. Yeah, my mic is on. Okay, I'm just wondering, and maybe Kelly can answer this. Is our staff, our amount of summer staff down this year from its usual totals for maintaining parks and trails and things like that?
We are down 2 staff positions right now. We're working on filling them, but we are down 2. 1 in Public Works and 1 in Parks and Maintenance, Parks and Recreation.
Okay, yeah, because I noticed the trail is quite the Miners Marsh is quite overgrown walking through there, and it definitely needs some work.
I will certainly make note of that. Thank you, Councillor Maxwell.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I noticed in the beginning of the Parks and Rec report that all facilities are open, and I have had a few more people ask me why Town Hall isn't opening up, even just the downstairs. And I know we've got renovations and stuff to do, but they just, and I guess I sort of don't understand why we can't, have it opened at least downstairs with a counter with a shield for a one-on-one. So I just thought I would bring that forward. Thank you.
CAO, did you wish to address that?
I think, other council meetings and with councilors, I think I have addressed that. The fact is that, we can't safely at this time do that and meet the provincial protocols. But again, we are monitoring and we're not getting those questions or concerns. I believe since we closed town hall, we have had 2 documented requests. So you may be getting the concerns, we're not. And as was reported in the financial report, it doesn't seem to be having an impact on the payment of taxes, property taxes or water. So, as soon as we can get it open safely, it will be open.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew, your hand's still up. Is that still up or is that a new up? Okay, excellent. All right, moving on to the Police Commission report. Deputy Mayor, as Police Commissioner, did you have anything to add to the Chief's report?
Nothing. We do meet this Friday. I will add that.
Very well, thank you. Are there any other questions on the Chief's report? All right, moving on to our Engineering and Public Works Director's report. Are there any questions with regards to this report? All right, moving on to our administration. We have our communication report. Are there any questions with regards to this report? All right, next up is the CAO's report. Are there any questions on this report? CAO, I note that we've been told that Valley Waste Resource Bylaw Amendment is coming to us, but it's must be taking the slow road. 22nd of April.
It is, your worship. It is taking a slow road, and I have been in contact again. And once again, it is in the hands of 2 solicitors, and we are just patiently awaiting the results of those discussions.
All right, well, thank you. I guess as long as they pick up the garbage, we really don't need a bylaw. Councillor Savage, I see your hand went up.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Kelly, CAO Rice, just a question around the, when you talk about town hall and you just addressed Deputy Mayor Gerard, remains close to the public. Are we sort of targeting a date? Does it look like it's going to be more so like September, mid-September?
Well, our target date is at the latest beginning of September, but until we actually get the tenders out, back and received with the timelines, once we have those in, then the timelines will be there and we'll be able to give you a much more accurate date.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
All right, if we could have a motion to accept the staff reports as presented, please. Councillor Maxwell, I've got your hand up.
Second.
Thank you. And second was Councillor Andrew. Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that staff reports be accepted as presented. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. All right, we move on to our unfinished business. We have, you were given homework at our last meeting and direction. So we have our noise bylaw first draft before us. So council was provided with direction to review the draft noise bylaw and to provide feedback through red lines to staff. Additionally, the solicitor advised council should also consider the things they want included in the document and those that they did not. So this will be an open discussion. I guess what the expectation is that if you've done your red lines, they can be dropped over or emailed to council tomorrow or to staff tomorrow through Jennifer's office is the best way. And then what she will do is collate everything, but she's going to be taking continuous notes while we're chatting here. So we'll go around the board and see where folks folks are feeling, and as well, the solicitor is on board. So I will say that if you have any direct questions, please do not hesitate to ask. And solicitor, I will also ask that if we're making any decisions that are going to put us in a position that we can't enforce this bylaw, please advise so that we don't just keep looking at the same thing. So who wants to start? Councillor Maxwell, go ahead.
I think that when I'm looking at 4.42 and noises, I think in order for us to enforce a bylaw, we do need to have a measuring device, whether that's decibels or whatever it is. We do need some sort of tool to measure noise. Otherwise, it's just left up to individuals to determine what that would be. So I'm in favor of adding some sort of decibel level to any noise, because I think we need that, and some of our residents agree with that. So if that's possible for solicitor and who's ever doing this staff to take a look at, that would be good. Also, number 7 under Schedule A, the operation of a recreational vehicle or boat. I'm not sure that we have any boats but we might on the river at some point. Would that still be a useful section? So I had a question mark by that one. Number 13, again, the operation of public address system. And again, that emits sound. I think we need something concrete there. As your worship pointed out in an email, the operation of a powered rail car, I think we're beyond the railway days now in Kentville, unfortunately, so that might want to come out. And now you correct me here, but the operation of a garburator, solid waste, bulk lift, refuge, compacting, I don't think we do that in the town of Kentville anymore. So would that still be appropriate? Those were my questions there.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had a couple similar to Councillor Maxwell. Yes, I had 18. I had 13. I also had 7. So those 3 she had pointed out. Number 4 under Schedule A, the detonation of fireworks or explosive devices not used in construction or quarrying. So I think that would have to be amended because some folks can light them off in their backyards, etc. Number 2, the operation of a vehicle or a vehicle with a trailer resulting in banging, clanking, squealing, or other like sounds due to improperly secure load or equipment or inadequate maintenance. That should probably be, I don't know, taken out or reworded, or it just seems a little bit cumbersome. And then back to what Councillor Maxwell mentioned, the noises emitted by machinery or equipment. I do believe also that there needs to be some sort of something to measure the decibels. And I think I can refer back to the email that we received from a couple of the residents in Kentville about having one of those decibel readers and the fact that it needs to be calibrated. And also in terms of the time frames that we have, maybe looking at it being between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. as opposed to, 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. as opposed to 11 and 12 p.m. And I'm happy to recap those in an email to Jennifer tomorrow if it pleases you.
Everything is recorded, so unless you want to just scan your sheet and send it in, it'll be satisfactory. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, Councillor Andrew, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I guess the big thing is I find this. I mean, we're entering into such subjective territory, but I'm happy also because I know certainly the first couple of years being on council, there were a lot of people who felt that issues like this weren't being attended to. And I think it's because we don't have measurables in place. And I guess that's my only thought is although I don't imagine anyone going around with a decibel meter, that'd be problematic, but we almost need that. There almost needs to be something, and I don't know how we weigh, I guess, anyway, so I do plan to, I really felt, because I felt that I needed to hear from other members of council and how they felt, but that's the biggest thing for me, is that there are times and there are areas where we need a measurable, we need an actual number of decibels or whatever it is that we can say when it goes beyond this, it's a problem. And then of course the challenges for staff is sometimes you can have an issue that becomes an issue because two neighbors are at odds with each other, and I have a situation like that on my street, where it doesn't matter what they do, it's not pleasing to the other. So I think there's, I don't know. I actually, some ways prefer that staff handle this, but I know they can't handle it if we don't give them the tools to do so. And all of the things we're talking about, if it's not enforceable, I'm not sure the value of it. So I don't know. I'm sitting here as someone been reading the correspondence and reading the documents and still scratching my head. How do we do this in a way that doesn't doesn't seem like a municipal overreach, but at the same time we're facilitating peaceful, functional neighborhoods and neighbor to neighbor relations. Anyway, so that's my thoughts right now.
Thank you. Councillor Pulsifer. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry about that.
Well,
Anyway, I only had basically one comment, and that was the addition of being able to monitor the decibel level. That stood out to me, and also the powered rail car noises and so on, which does not pertain to us. So that was it.
Thank you. Councillor Bolland.
Yeah, thank you. My comments echo the rest, and more specifically Councillor Maxwell's, but then also to Councillor Andrews. So I want to make sure that there's no reluctance to enforce a bylaw. And again, we need to have a device to measure decibel levels. And we also have to watch the noise levels if we have events at Town Square, because people live in Town Square. So that's could be a sensitive area for some people, and certainly the choo-choo trains are not coming back, unfortunately, so that item can come out. But decibel levels, is there a will to enforce this? And again, keep an eye on people that live in our downtown when we have events at Town Square.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I again, like many of my fellow councillors, I think we have to have something that reads the decibel levels, and for two reasons. It's similar to the radar meters that the police have. When the police get a complaint and say people are racing up and down my road, the illusion of people are going way over the speed limit. When the police go and sit there and they monitor, 9 times out of 10, it's the perception that they're going fast. So if we have a reader or readers or whatever mechanisms we need, because neighbors think, oh, geez, that's really, really loud. Sometimes it might be, but it also can be something just to prove that no, it's not. But I guess maybe a bigger concern for me is what happened the last time the big complaint or a big complaint happened was the folks that complained got bounced around saying that's a planning department issue, and then it's a town hall issue, and it's a police department issue, and nobody actually knew whose issue it was. So that I think we have to fix. But secondly, If it is going to be our bylaws officer, he only works 8 till 4 Monday to Friday. So who's going to pick that up on the night shifts, and who's going to pick that up? I'm assuming it's going to be the police, and on the weekend. And those would be my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So all of these comments are being recorded. Jennifer will have them all collated for us and come back to us. So I started at the point of why do we make bylaws? And the Municipal Government Act actually gives us the ability to make bylaws. In this case, it's actually para 172D. And we are expected to act in good faith and in the public interest when creating these laws. So creating a bylaw that meets general statutory and fundamental principle standards is only part of the process. A good bylaw needs to be drafted for certainty, predictability, democratic transparency, and accountability. We should aim to create bylaws that are understandable, enforceable, and accomplish the council's desired goals. I guess I hate when I read a bylaw and I have to look up 4 or 5 words because I don't know what they mean. And so it should be very clear. So what's our goal with the noise bylaw? I would say that it's to ensure that citizens have the enjoyment of their property without disruption from undesirable noise. So I would really like to see this bylaw, I guess, streamlined and made, and I realize that right now what we're looking at is a document that was all encompassing as opposed to what it was. But I have to say that in this case, I really think that we're creating a bylaw based on the desires of one resident to prosecute a neighbor. And numerous complaints have been filed over this matter, and the police have investigated each event and not found cause for complaint. So again, I go back to, I don't think that our bylaw should be onerous. And I pulled out some Environmental Protection Act numbers. And it says that noises are considered to be at an acceptable level if they are between 40 and 60 decibels or match the ambient background noise. So a dishwasher is 60 decibels. A refrigerator is 40 decibels. And if we consider some of the things that we're being encouraged to use, your fridge is too noisy. And I realize that you don't run your fridge, or you can't, yeah, I guess you do run your fridge 24 hours a day. But if I go to the dishwasher example, at 60 dBs, you don't run your dishwasher 24 hours a day. So you don't have to listen to it 24 hours a day. But I think we have to be very cognizant and realize that the noise and, you know, different nights, different atmospheric conditions, you can hear different sounds, whether it's the road, the Highway 101. I mean, there's nights where you can hear that through the town of Kentville, and there's other nights where you don't hear it at all. So I think that we have to be very cognizant of this, and we still have to look at people's enjoyment of their property. So I'm not a fan of using test equipment unless people are trained to use that test equipment, and unless that test equipment is calibrated and maintained to a certain level. Testing sound is not something that just anybody should be picking up an instrument and doing so, and I don't feel that this is a case for that. So I put those as my red lines, and like most others, I picked up on the same ones. I guess some of these things are just, you know, one of the ones that I did say was operation of any refrigeration unit which attached to a refrigerator trailer unless the refrigeration trailer is in motion. Well, I don't know if you remember when we had Juan, both White Juan, and then when Juan hit, I mean, there were people using refrigeration units for entire neighborhoods so that they could empty their freezers into the refrigeration unit. And so do we really want to limit the use of some of these things? The other thing as well is that I think that our noise bylaw should also include our special events permits, so that if somebody was doing a street party and, you know, all the neighbors were involved except for maybe one neighbor, that you know, they would say, okay, on June 25th we're having a street party, and then they basically go around and inform everybody, and so that there actually be a permit for that, so that if the police are called, they can say, look, we've got a permit. The town has said we could do this. Our music has to go off at midnight. Our hooting and hollering has to stop at midnight. And, you know, so I also think that that should be a part of that, but I've documented in what I plan to submit. So those are my inputs. Does anyone else have anything else to add? Solicitor, I see your hand, so I'll go to you first, please.
I just wanted to reiterate my comments from the last meeting. From just a legal perspective, it's really about trying to address what the problem is. And Your Worship referred to, quite frankly, the only problem that I'm aware of that the town of Kentville has had, other than barking dogs, and those are addressed under a different bylaw. The town of Kentville has been very lucky. It does not have the problems the town of Wolfville has with parties, for example. But yet you have a student population with Kingsteck on your boundary, just outside your boundary. So when it comes to measurement, that measurement of decibels is usually at the property line or from the street typically, or the neighbor's property. The town of Wolfville has, perhaps had, I don't know whether it's past tense, they had that approach, they took that approach. And I don't know whether that's still how they approach things. I do know that for a period of time when they used that to prosecute a lot of parties. I think that some of the complaints or that the town sees when it's one neighbor and another neighbor, often it may not be a loud noise, but it may be that it's going all the time. So that small motor, whether it's a refrigeration unit, right? If your neighbor's window is too close to your bedroom and they have an air conditioner in their window, that could drive you nuts if you're sensitive to that. That's not the example that I'm aware of, but it could. And, but that is unlikely to be contrary to any noise bylaw I would suggest that you would adopt, because the decibels from that will be lower than whatever decibel number you will adopt. So if it's about the noise and any kind of noise, then decibels may be all you need to regulate. As you've pointed out, that the draft bylaw that was brought to you was quite antiquated, and I think the CAO acknowledged that in the last meeting. All kinds of things, and by way of example, that you don't need in the town of Kentville. But I would encourage you to decide upon your approach, because if it really is about decibels, and that's the route you're going to go, then giving specific examples is irrelevant unless there is something that is a problem in town that I'm not aware of. Those would be my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Savage, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, Worship. So just a point where Solicitor Matart talked about the continuous noise. I think it really does come down to those two things. I think it comes down to decibels, and I think it comes down to, you know, when is it acceptable to have so much noise after a certain period of time after night in the evening. And it comes down to how you measure it. And so just to his point, I think that makes a lot of sense in the fact that we have so many different, whether it's a motor or whether it's a fridge or whether it's a, who knows, right? There's so many things that can make noise. When I think about the special events bylaw that we have that pertains just to the one property for wedding events, I'm thinking that that's probably how it's measured up there in terms of the noise. I don't know that for sure. And I meant to look at the special events bylaw before the meeting today, but I didn't have an opportunity. And maybe it is that the folks that operate that business, that's how they can monitor the noise. Maybe they have a decibel machine and that's calibrated on an ongoing basis. So I guess, yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to add one more thing. You also need to think about the areas of town. So the business park in particular, I'd mentioned to the CAO that if you're banning the operation of reefer units, for example, those refrigerated truck containers, if you're going to ban those, I don't think you can ban them in the business park, because there's likely reefer units running out there 24 hours a day. And if you were to measure the decibels in the business park from the property line, they're probably higher than what you might allow in a residential area. So I think part of this is you may have to think about areas of town, perhaps how they're zoned. Historically, when characterizing what's too noisy, when you didn't use decibels, the character of the neighborhood was taken into consideration, which is part of what made it such a subjective determination. But you looked at the character of the neighborhood and those sorts of things. So what might be noisy in one neighborhood wouldn't be noisy in another. So just something to keep in mind.
Thank you. Before we go on, we've lost Councillor Pulsifer.
She should just be able to rejoin under the same invite,
Yeah.
I would think.
Okay, Councillor Andrew, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I hear what you're saying, Mayor Snow, about the concerns about somebody who's not adequately trained going around with a decibel meter and all those things. I wonder, I think 99% of the time, people are pretty reasonable, whether it's residential or business to business, residential to business, or whichever it is. I know that when the power goes out in the winter, I live in a neighborhood where the yards are not super big and the houses are kind of big boxes that are fairly close to each other. And I don't want to offend anybody, but my neighbors, a couple of my neighbors run generators and they drive me nuts. Especially, the power's out, everything's really quiet and still, and the generators are going. However, I know that's what they need to do. And for us, we don't do that. We kind of live with it and have candles and we burn wood and all those things. I think it's really sad when it comes to the place when people need to go to the authorities, whether that's council or maybe the first go-to is Kentfield Police Service. But I would say that, my experience with Kentfield Police Service is they would be amazing at negotiating peace. Now, if I'm the noise maker, I have a pool with a filter that goes during the night. Maybe there's things I could do if my neighbor were disgruntled over that. And so I think there's just some consideration on both sides. And I think these situations are rare. And I know there's a little background to the situation that prompted some of this discussion, but I do think that 99% of the times these things can be reasoned out between reasonable people, and hopefully that's the case. So I appreciate your Mayor Snow, your comments around the problems around that. There may be with the special events permit or considerations given to the property up on Prospect. That makes sense that some testing might be done in that kind of instance at the expense of the owner, but to run around or to expect some of our police officers to be trained or whoever it would be, maybe it isn't the case. And I wonder, I've heard this instance, but I haven't heard so many of these instances in Kentville that I just wonder if we're not maybe making more of an issue than it truly is in most settings. Anyway, that's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. CAO, did you want to say something?
Actually, Councillor Andrew just brought it up, but it was to do with generators. Part of this draft, I mean, even after we submitted the first draft to staff, there's still things that you start thinking about and things that, aren't there. And we did try to make it as broad as we possibly could in order to get all the conversations and the talking going. But generators is one issue that we sort of haven't figured out where it would fit, because generators, depending on the size, would have different decibel levels. Some generators would operate a whole home, would be much louder than a smaller generator that's used just to keep a freezer or lights on or something. So again, there's a lot more that we have to think about as we're moving along with this, and the biggest challenge is going to be the levels of the decibel levels.
Thank you, CAO. Councillor Maxwell, you have your hand up. You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry. I think there's a wealth of information out there on sound and noise because, you know, we've had lots of problems with wind farms and all kinds of different things. So I think there's probably just a wealth of information out there. And I think that, you know, if staff went through some of the research, probably be able to come up with a reasonable decibel level that, you know, that seems to work in other communities and things like that. We may need an exception made for generators. I know I run a generator. I have to, or my basement will flood because I have a sump pump. And, you know, so there's different extenuating circumstances. But I also think we're past the time where we can think that everybody's going to be reasonable in every situation, unfortunately. And so I think it is kind of nice to have a guideline that we can follow. And hopefully things can work out between individuals and it will never come to us. But if complaints do come to us, sometimes you have to have a body that you can go to talk to and to express your concerns. So I'm just suggesting go to the research and see what's out there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bolland.
Thank you, Richard. So echoing that comment, I think staff should look at two municipalities that are in similar size to ours. Let's look at Bridgewater, what they're doing in Truro. See what they've got for bylaws. They have an equal, similar population. Good comments about the business park. And I agree, I don't want to pick on people with the generator. When you lose power, when your children are suffering, it's cold, etc. If your neighbor has a generator on, then you just have to, you know, maybe, well, that's the way it is, right? With climate change, etc., we are going to lose power in the winters. And I don't feel like that we should be policing generators, as long as they're used in a respectful fashion, certainly, and not, but people are suffering, they need power. But I think we should look at what Truro's doing, what Bridgewater's doing, see what the best practices are, and keep moving forward.
All right, thank you. Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just was going to make one more point, and I think pretty much as a council, we're all on the same page on this. I think sending it back to staff with the whole host of comments that we've all made today will certainly be helpful. I think you're going to see Kentville continue to grow, going to have more and more population here. So I think it's important that we have a noise bylaw of sorts, and I think it has to have some teeth to it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And just for information's sake, a quiet air conditioner, window air conditioner is 43 decibels. All right, so all of that information will move on. So be prepared to receive another draft from staff. And again, it will come back to us as homework to review it and make our comments and move on from there. So we're moving on now to correspondence. You have two pieces of correspondence. Both of them are transit audits, one from Kings Point to Point and one's from Kings Transit. So those are for your information, and they're also up on our website if anyone has any interest in looking at those. But there's no comments or action required out of those two items. So we move on to our new business, and our first item of new business is electronic voting. The CAO has been attending some Zoom conferences on this with CAOs and that from the province, and so we have a recommendation that council consider moving to all electronic voting for the 2020 municipal elections using IntelliVote System Incorporated at a cost of $12,000 plus HST. For plus or minus 4,865 eligible voters based on the final electors list being available. So if I could have a motion for this, please.
I'll move that.
Councillor Bolland, and a second.
Second.
Thank you. So it has been moved and seconded that council approve moving to an all electronic voting for the 2020 municipal elections using IntelliVote System Incorporated at a cost of $12,000 plus HST to include plus or minus 4,865 eligible voters based on the final electorals list being available. CAO, was there anything that you wanted to add to this before we go into discussion?
No, Your Worship, I think I've pretty much covered everything off. There's out of the 49 municipalities now, more than half are moving this, have already moved this way, and the rest are considering it. The issue being that I guess the biggest thing is that we don't know when or if the second wave of COVID will hit. I think the when is probably more apt to happen than the if. But it's very difficult for us to try to even plan for a normal paper ballot election because we can't get the commitment, as I've said in my report, from staff in order to move forward with the plans. And also there will be added costs with paper ballots as I outlined in my report. So certainly if there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
And CAO, when you say staff, you mean election staff?
Election staff. No, election staff. And basically, again, election staff tend to be those that would be in a higher risk because those are seniors who work polls both for federal, provincial, and municipal elections. And so they do tend to be in the more vulnerable sector. And therefore, that's the reason why municipalities are having problems getting those commitments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Savage, your hand is up.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just a couple of things. I'm just wondering from the last election in 2016, what percentage of the residents in the town of Kentville used e-voting. I don't know if we can find that out, but I would like to know
We have a
that.
report on our website actually, and it was actually quite high. It was almost 70% of people because we only did paper ballots on election day.
Election day, right.
Some other places did them as part of their the early ballot days, but the town of Kentville only used them on actual election day.
Okay, so we wouldn't necessarily then have to sort of implement any kind of training for our residents so that they could understand and know how to use e-voting? Probably not if the percentage was that high. The only other question that I have was, so I believe in our budget, we put aside $40,000 for election expenses. So the 12,000 that you're talking about, CAO Rice, is that over and above?
No, that's included.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Councillor Maxwell, your hand is up.
Yes, I like this idea. I think it brings more security actually to the election process. We have had some concerns about non-residents voting in the past, and I think this tightens it up quite a bit. I am concerned though for our senior population living in long-term care homes. And I think that perhaps the old paper ballot might still be the way that they should do theirs. And if we're just using it for seniors' homes, I'm hoping it would be pretty sterile in those homes, and it shouldn't be too bad. But I think it's unreasonable to expect people in long-term care to be able to do the voting by computer. So that's my comment.
So just as a clarification on that, Councillor Maxwell, what we're looking at too is they can still do the electronic voting in the long-term care homes and the seniors' homes. We would provide some laptops and the staff. We would train the staff on how to assist the residents in voting. So they would still have assistance, but it would be very specific to each home, and there would be no outsiders obviously coming in, but we would work to train their staff to do the electronic voting in the long-term care homes.
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
Solicitor.
I just thought it would be useful to pose a question. I just wanted to be clear whether, CAO, whether this includes telephone voting. My understanding was it does.
Yes, it does.
Yes, so it's not just computers. It's
No, it's
voting as well.
telephone and computer, yes.
Councillor Bolland. Oh, your hand is down.
Question answered.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Solicitor.
So I will send you each a link to the 2016 municipal election, and you'll actually see the breakdown by age, who voted, how many were eligible, who voted, whether they voted by web, phone, or paper, and percentages. It's really really quite interesting when you start looking at it, how many people voted, and we have always gone over to the homes in the town of Kentville as their own polling site. So I have no fear of how we will deal with that again. Councillor Maxwell, was your hand up again?
Yes, just one more question. There must be a way, but how do you know when a person is voting that they're a resident of the town of Kentville?
Because they're either on the voters list, and if they're not on the voters list, then they must show their address. Either they can do it through a power bill, a water bill, a tax bill, or they can also do a statutory declaration, which is a legal document if they have none of those, including a driver's license with a correct address on.
Okay. Do we know how many statutory declarations we had in the last election?
That I can't answer.
Don't know the answer to that.
Can't answer that.
Can we find out?
And the other thing too is there will be a time frame where if people don't receive their voting cards, if they don't receive their pins, that they will contact us, and then we'll make sure that they are on the voting list, and then they will receive a pin.
All right, so are you ready for the question? The question is to approve moving to an all electronic voting for the 2020 municipal elections using the IntelliVote system incorporated at a cost of $12,000 plus HST for plus or minus 4,865 eligible voters based on the final electors list being available. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Bolland, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Pulsifer, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Andrew, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Savage, how say you? I say yes. Motion is carried. Thank you. The council, oh, sorry, Solicitor?
Your worship, just to be clear, as the CAO said in her report, this is going to require a bylaw amendment, so it will come back to you. So this was the instruction to staff to move that forward. So so you will have occasion to deal with that amendment to the bylaw at that time.
All right, thank you. So the council has confidential land business, which must be conducted in a closed session. We require a motion to go into the closed session to discuss the agenda item, and we will return to Facebook Live as we will have a motion and for adjournment. So if I could have that moved, please.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. And the time is 5 p.m. Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.